Hi, everybody. Thanks, Cindy. Thank you, as Cindy said, again for joining us for our 5th virtual admin session. Can't believe it's already March and we're on our 5th one. The year is going fast. Today's topic is building inclusive preschool for all and preschool for all expansion programs. As most of you all know, children with disabilities are a priority population for PFA and PFAE. So we're really excited today to be joined by our presenters, Ann Kramer and Pam Rising-Reckner from Early Choices. Early Choices is the inclusion initiative of the Illinois State Board of Education and promotes increasing high quality, inclusive early education for every child birth to age 5. The goal of Early Choices is to increase the number of children with disabilities receiving specialized services in regular early care and education settings. We really hope you find this session beneficial, and I will hand it over to Ann and Pam.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. It's so good to see so many people here today. And I also see a lot of friends, right? So thank you. I'm going to take a second here to, there we go. I think we're good. Can see my screen. People are nodding. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thanks, Jenny. We are glad to be here. We've got all kinds of goodies for you today. I know one of our handout with the links has our emails. So as we go through today, please feel free to, if we don't answer question, if we don't get to your question or it's not, you want to go deeper than we're able to today, please email us. We're more than happy to do that. So, but my name's Ann Kramer. I'm the project director for Early Choices. And Pam Rising-Reckner is joining me today, and she's one of our inclusion specialists. I don't know, you want to say hi, Pam? I can't.
I'd love to say good afternoon to everybody. It's so good to see so many people here and so many familiar faces. So thanks for joining us today. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, we are. We had fun putting today together, Pam and I, as we were kind of deciding what we wanted to, what would be most helpful. And so this is kind of a big picture of where we're going this afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit about inclusion and kind of the why behind inclusion. We're going to look at what makes inclusion work, which kind of helps lay out what pieces need to be in place, and then how that overlaps with the high quality programs that you're already implementing. And of course, it wouldn't be an Early Choices event if we didn't give you a whole bunch of resources, because that is one of our favorite things to do, is to share some of the goodies that we have and make connections for you to use in your program. So, and yeah, Jenny kind of did a little summary of our mission statement. If you haven't been out to our website, please jot this one down. It's also on that links document. But this is our mission statement, and we're just really excited that we get to be here today and focus on supporting you in implementing inclusive programs through your Preschool for All and your Preschool for All expansion. And we are a sister project with ECPL, who's hosting today. And so we appreciate their support, and we just met this morning about some other stuff. So we work closely together. And then we couldn't do our work without our other sister project, Starnet. And so Starnet, I'm sure many of you are familiar with, but just in case you're not, they also provide professional development specifically around early childhood special education and supporting families also in early childhood and early care and education. So if you haven't used their professional learning resources, make sure you check them out too. But we are a small project. Early Choices is small, we are statewide. And so we're small but mighty. And so we rely on our partnerships with ECPL and Starnet to kind of spread the word. So we work closely together to do that. I'm wondering, is it okay if I ask that you guys in the chat just say where you're from? That would be super helpful to me. Just and to Pam, just to know, because I know a lot of your faces and names, but yeah, so great. Elgin, Lombard. Oh, see my friends. Ladsey, East Maine, someone down south. I saw someone down south.
On
Right?
County,
County, there we go.
no,
Grace Dyson from El Dorado.
Yeah, they're all over. Awesome. Look at this. We are covering the whole state. I'm up north and Pam's down south, so we are everywhere. Awesome. Quad Cities,
wow,
corner to corner. Edwardsville.
Belleville,
Yeah, awesome.
El Dorado.
Springfield.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm just calling out the southern ones.
Yeah, you know, well, yeah. Well, we're glad we're covering the whole state and we get a little feel for who's all here. So thank you for joining us. So this, we talked, I mentioned we talk a little bit about inclusion, and I'm sure you may have seen this before. This is the definition that of inclusion for early childhood that is in the joint position statement between the Division of Early Childhood and the National Association for the Education of Young Children. So these two groups came together and defined what high quality inclusion is. So I'm going to give you a second. I'm going to be quiet and let you read this, and then I'm going to ask you a couple questions. So okay. So as you read that, and I've read this countless times, right? Something different always stands out for me. So in the chat, if you could just put a couple of words or a phrase that stood out for you as you were reading this definition of inclusion today. Access, participation, and supports. All right. Belonging. Love it. You guys are so good. Thank you. Look at all this. Communities, the support, every child, each and every child, and a broad range of activities. And it's the right of every infant and young child. That sense of belonging and being full members stands out. A supportive environment for all. Yep. And regardless of ability. Support of everyone in the family. Awesome. Yeah, it's so rich, right? It's just, this has so much in it. And really, we use this as our guiding light in our work at Early Choices around supporting inclusion in programs. And all the pieces are here, right? We talk about, it's not just the policy, not just the practice, it includes those values. And it's for all kiddos, right? Each and every child, and their families, and that belonging, and the relationships, and development, and learning, putting it all together. So we, like I said, we use this as a touchstone, and you'll see it in a lot of what we do. And we hope that in your program, if you have a mission, vision statement, some of this works its way into that, because all our kiddos have a right to participate. So, and these defining features, which a lot of you said jumped out for you, was access, participation, and supports. And for us, you know, think about this for the children. Do they have access? Can we get them there? And it isn't just, do they have access to the program? Do they have access to the curriculum? Are they able to, and all of that leads to the second part, right? Being able to participate. And then what supports do those children need? And then we also use this as our approach to supporting you and in implementing. Are we giving access? How are we supporting participation? And what kinds of supports are needed? And when we think about supports, we think about those being, sometimes they're people supports, right? Like the expertise of a speech and language, or the expertise of a specialist. But then also they could be those less, they could be the supplementary aids and services that we'll talk about, like some tech or maybe a picture schedule, they kind of run the gamut. And so we think of those in different ways. And then also we think about support can be that professional learning for your team. So what else do our teachers need to know? What do we need to know as administrators in supporting our program? So this kind of frames up our conversation. And so we come back to it a lot. And I mentioned that we'll kind of tying back to the high quality programs that you already are implementing with your Preschool for All grants and expansion grants. So we kind of see this inclusive practices as tucking in different ways. So in your general high quality practices, right? You use developmentally appropriate practice, you use evidence-based practices. And when we look at, which I'll show you in a little bit, what makes inclusion work, that tool builds into just like a general high quality practices. And then we have what we call like general inclusion supports, which these are probably things, whether you have a lot of children with disabilities in your program or not, you're probably already implementing some of these because they're just good practices for young children, but they also are very supportive of our kiddos with IEPs. So we're doing those supports in the natural environment in your classroom. We're using visual supports. Most preschool classrooms, when we go in, we see lots of great visuals in the centers, all throughout the program, in the hallway. So those are they can be very targeted, but they can also just be regular, classroom-wide supports. And then using our peers to support each other. That's a great inclusion support that teachers use naturally. Ask a friend for help, have a buddy when we're walking in the hallway, things like that. And then routines within routines, that whole idea is around supporting all of our life is a routine, right? In our classrooms, it's all routine. We have a schedule for the day. We work through, circle time to center time to wrapping up, maybe some gross motor time. So those are big routines, but then within each of those, we have another routine, right? So within circle time, there's a whole routine. And then within parts of circle time, if we're identifying the story or the topic of the day, there's maybe a routine for that. And so always looking for those routines, because our children all thrive on using those routines throughout their day. So we have a lot of these practices in place to support inclusion already. And then when we get down to individualizing supports or planning for individual children, we want to look at their goals and what kind of, those supplemental aids and services that we need to put in place to support them. So this is kind of our big picture piece, and the idea that we've got a lot of things in place, and sometimes we need to look more specifically around specific children, but a lot of these practices are already happening, and we have a good foundation to build upon to include more children. So. And another kind of big picture idea is that we know before we get to methods or how do we do this, we really need to look at our mindset. And this is always a challenge, right? Because I know you guys are administrators, you've got things to do, you need to get things done. What do I got to do? I want to get it done, right? And mindset is a little bit broader and sometimes can feel a little less tangible and less like, oh, I checked that off. I have my 7 things in place and I'm good to go. But it is critically important that we have a mindset, a growth mindset, and we're thinking about how we can adjust and what we can do to support our learners, instead of looking at that more static or fixed mindset where it's like, I don't know how to do this. This never worked for me before, so why is it going to work now? So this graphic is something that we use a lot. We might have even given you a copy if you've seen us in person. And I did put a link in the links document so that you can find where this came from. And there's more goodies associated from this group. But this whole idea of a growth mindset is key. And it is important that we take some time to examine that. And we know that there's different ways to kind of touch that mindset. And so we've tried to organize that a little bit to kind of help us think through that. And so we've got those pieces that kind of, for some folks, helping them think through their mindset is the heart piece. So like what really touches your heart and makes you be more reflective on what your mindset is and why inclusion might be important to you, and how that can really change someone's life, right? And so for these things, I always think about like hearing a story from a parent who's had an experience for their child being included, or hearing from a young adult with a disability, their experience of being included. Those are things that can really move you from a heart perspective. And then of course we have our brain stuff, right? Research, law, policy, those kind of pieces. Like for some of us, that's what helps us drive our mindset, right? That kind of gives us a frame. And for others, it might be experience. Like I can't do it unless I've seen it, or, that's what drives their mindset. And so we always encourage people to take some time with their teams when they're looking at making changes in their practice around including children, that they take each of these pieces and think about mindset and have some dialogue with their teams around this. And we're happy to give you more details or strategies on how to do that. But we wanted to kind of give you a little kind of frame for that. And then just a few of the, these are just really reminders, because I think a lot of you know a lot of these things, but I'm just gonna do a little review here of some of the legal and policy pieces related to inclusion. And so I can't believe it's been since 2015, but 2015, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Education came together and put together a policy, a joint policy statement on inclusion. And so that's the organization, the federal organization over like childcare and Head Start, and then education, special education came together and put this policy statement together. And they really nicely kind of summarized those that brain mindset stuff here. And I think I put a link in the links document to this. But what's great about the policy statement is that it sets forth these recommendations for states and school districts. And it really just sets an expectation that we provide that high quality inclusive placement for our youngest children. It also kind of summarizes all the science and the research around inclusion. And we know that it does benefit all of our children. And kiddos with IEPs make more gains when they're included than when they're not. And there's no research supporting that being in a separate setting, children do better. And that's kind of amazing. So just thinking about all of our research and our practices and how sometimes they don't always align. But we only have research that shows that inclusion works. So that's awesome. And then finally, we also have the statement kind of goes through and talks about how those individualized supports that children with IEPs may need can be implemented in those typical early childhood programs. And we know this through our work and through supporting other programs, but it's also nice to have that kind of research and that big picture perspective from our national leadership. And then, it's just nice to be reminded that, the profession also, the DEC and NACE also push towards inclusion too. So we have kind of all these efforts pulling together, and the policy statement does a nice job of connecting. I see a couple of questions in here. I'll see if I can find the reference for the growth mindset, and I will come back, Natalie, to your question about the report.
And there is also a question about whether ISBE collects data on the percentage of programs using each inclusive model. And that answer is no, we do not have a way of tracking that as of right now. So we can make an assumption that most programs use the dually certified teacher model. However, we don't have actual data to back that up.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. You're right. And I would say from a practice input, yes, the blended and the collaborative model are the two that get the most traffic. So oh, and thanks, Emily, for putting my link in there. She's on it. Gotta love my friends. So just a connection back to public school districts. The LEAs or public schools are responsible for that free appropriate public education. And so I know some of our PFA programs and PFAE programs may be not in LEAs, but in school districts. So for those kiddos, the school districts are still responsible for the special education supports and services. So I know sometimes I get questions from folks who are like, well, I want to, include kids in our childcare, but do I have to hire the special education teacher? It's like, oh goodness, we have to kind of talk about that collaboration between the LEA and the provider and making those connections. So, okay, so that was a lot of, so I kind of went through a lot of the reasons why you might be interested in building an inclusive program, right? So, and we kind of reviewed some of that mindset stuff in terms of the legal, the research, policy pieces, but then also the heart around that personal connection or your experiences. And for some of you, it might just be, I don't really know what my why is. I just know I need to do this because my stakeholders have an expectation that I move forward. So I'm just kind of curious. We have a little poll here. If you could take a second and think about what's your why. So what's your connection to being here today? What are you thinking about? So you should have the poll on your screen and be able to answer. Nina says there should be an E, all of the above, and I like that too. That's great. That's great. I've never done this as a poll, but I've also never had one that had quite so many people in it. So I was like, I guess we'll have to do it as a poll rather than having you all on mic. Are you able to publish the results, Susie? Or are we still waiting?
Yes, right now we have 121 out of 148. So just let me know if you'd like to wait till the end, or I can publish it now.
I'll give you a second and then Susie can publish. How about that? Here it is. Successful experiences. Oh, I love that. I love that that was a big high winner. And legal's low. That's okay. So you're not just doing it because you have to. That's all right. I get it. But you know what? You want to make sure you're following the rules. So I understand why that is a why. So thank you. Well, that's great. So we got a lot of kind of across the board ideas around why, what's your why, and that's okay. That's awesome. So I'm gonna, I think it was Natalie asked about a report that she put the link in the chat. And that is really about moving forward in Illinois around building the connections between community-based organizations and LEAs in terms of supporting inclusion. And I feel like there's so much work to be done. And so we are moving ahead and making efforts in different ways. And there's all kinds of things happening. Today is actually one of them, right? Like reaching out. A lot of times Early Choices is hosting our own events. And so being able to partner with all the PFA and PFAE programs has been a huge success. And then also doing things like moving out, looking beyond currently our current structures and looking for opportunities to expand. And I think the state's doing a great job of all kinds of things are shifting, right? Those regional planning councils, there's all kinds of things happening. So I'm going to take a moment and we're going to, oh, you know what, I'm going to go. Oh,
We know.
Wait. Sorry, I got my slides out of order, so give me a second. So I wanted to kind of go over what makes inclusion work. And so I'm going to show this short little video, and then we're going to talk about the tools that we have. So this is from us here in Illinois, and it's the tool we use to support planning for inclusion. So I'm going to set it up that way, and then we're going to hear this little video.
That preschool inclusion is supported by laws, research, and professional organizations. But it's hard to know what high-quality inclusion looks like. Early Choices can help. Let's look at what makes inclusion work in early childhood. It all starts with a vision, developed with input from families and the community, supporting the belief that all children can and will learn, and that children and families are full members of the community. Speaking of families, programs need to collaborate with families intentionally to support their participation, incorporate their input, and to connect them with resources. What do the classrooms look like? Program-wide, teams should use best practices to support, monitor, and enhance learning within the regular early childhood classroom. This includes embedding specialized services into the routines of the day. To support individual children, teams use adaptations and support systems that are based on each child's individualized education plan. Natural supports are provided for each child to promote engagement in activities and peer interactions. Let's talk about collaboration. Teams should use strategies to enhance their functioning in interpersonal relationships and share and collaborate on plans, reports, and assessments. Teams need to have formal time to plan and reflect on practices to best support children, families, and each other. How will the staff know how to support children? They need professional learning through a variety of venues based on individual needs and the program's continuous improvement plans. To support all of this work, high-quality, inclusive programs need administration that provides leadership to support inclusion in concrete and identifiable ways, such as implementing policies and procedures that support continuous quality improvement related.
Wow, that just ended. I don't know what happened there. Continuous quality improvement. And then we say thanks for, I don't know what happened. So I'm going to just go to the next slide. I hope my next video doesn't shut off like that. So that tool, What Makes Inclusion Work, that was just nicely summarized by my colleague Emily in that video. We use that in our planning. So when we work with a program, we encourage them to take each chunk here and work through all these pieces. And we, start with that vision and attitude, which kind of goes back to that why, because if we don't know why we're doing something, it's really hard to do. And it's very easy to fall back into our old ways or not make those shifts. So we've, this document is on our website, and on the, all the details. So this is like the pretty graphic, right? And the back side of it has kind of bullet points around each point to kind of help you think through. And then Early Choices has also made this into a needs assessment. So if you are interested, you can just drop us an email. We have it that you can turn it into your own Google survey if that works for you, or if you're that's not your preferred method and you need some support to get that out to your staff, we can share with you a SurveyMonkey link for your program and then get you those results. But it kind of walks through each of the pieces here and helps think about what we have in place, what maybe we need to be focusing on, and then kind of thinking about where we want to go from there. So if you haven't checked out What Makes Inclusion Work, I encourage you to do that. And then, like I said, if you're interested in kind of digging a little deeper, we're happy to help you with using it as a needs assessment. So this handout came with, I hope, your email with all the handouts for today. And there's also a link in that links document. So maybe about within the last year or so, ISBE kind of combined a couple of guidance documents and updated to this one. So these are some models that can be used to support inclusive practices in your program. And there's you can kind of see we've got the dually licensed teacher model where one teacher who is certified to teach dually licensed in a classroom with an assistant. And we also see the itinerant model where there's a classroom teacher and a PEL endorsed LBS1 or ECSE approval person who comes in and supports those children with IEPs determined, as needed in the classroom. In some programs we work with, we have a co-teaching model where there's two teachers, one with each type of certification and leading the classroom. So that is also a great model. And then the collaborative model is where there is some collaboration in terms of supports from those related service or special education folks to the teacher in the classroom. And so this just kind of gives you some frame. I know we don't have any data on which is which or who gets used more. It's really more about what works for your program and the way you're set up, right? Because for some folks, it depends, they're all alone in a building. Some people have programs, classrooms in various buildings. There's just a whole lot of factors that kind of go in here. How big your program is, how many kiddos you have, that kind of thing. So, but we're going to, on the back of this is some guidance around what inclusion means for our programs. And so this is part of Pam, the actual thing. It's not as administrative rule, but this phrase shows up. Applicants must provide a description of the provisions to be made to allow for participation of children with disabilities in the program. So I'm going to turn it over to Pam.
Yeah, and Anne, I just wanted to go back to where you were talking about the itinerant model, because it came up with the Start Early report about having other programs serve kids with disabilities and then getting those services from the school district. And the itinerant model is probably a model that would work really well with having some kids that might be out in a Head Start or out in a child care center that need those services, and that itinerant teacher would provide those services away from the school district in whatever program those kids might be in. So when you were talking about that, it just made me think about whoever brought up, I think it was Natalie, brought up that report and how that's becoming more of an initiative in our state, and it could be well used in that situation.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, we can go over some of the questions to consider when you're looking at the highlights from the guidance. We'll review some key questions that we need to consider and highlight where they're addressed in the ISBE inclusion models and guidance document. So questions are, are children who are included with IEPs receiving services identified in the IEP in the PFA classroom? And do teachers and support staff in the classroom assure that the children with IEPs are part of all aspects of the classroom? Well, the highlights or the guidance document talks about the IEP team, including parents, determines the placement for children with IEPs, and general education should be considered for all students. Students with IEPs are active members of the classroom. Strategies, supports, and services identified in the IEPs are provided in the classroom and are embedded into classroom play, activities, and routines, resulting in minimal transitions. So it's key that children are a part of the classroom with the services embedded, not pulled out or received elsewhere. Research supports that children do better when they're included all day, every day. Children learn from daily interaction with their non-disabled peers. They develop friendships and feel a sense of belonging as an active member of their group. So how can we make sure that IEP interventions are offered in the PFA program? Collaboration, teaming, and planning. And going back to what makes inclusion work, the components that Anne just went over and talked about, and that great video that Emily did, those key points are all interrelated. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move along too. Thank you, Anne. So a couple more questions. Do we serve children with disabilities? And how do we make sure we are accepting and recruiting children with all kinds of abilities? So the guidance says recommended that at least 10%, but not more than 30% of each classroom's enrolled children have disabilities, defined as a child with a diagnosed disability other than speech only, that has completed a formal assessment, has an IFSP or an IEP, and is receiving or is eligible for support services. And the maximum number of students in the classroom is 20, we know that. The total number of students could be reduced depending on the needs of the children with IEPs. A minimum number of students per PFA classrooms is 15. That's PFA and PFAE. So this aligns to the guidance from ISBE that the ratio should be 70% children without IEPs to no more than 30% of children with IEPs other than speech. The citation for this is from the 23 Illinois Administrative Code 226.730A. It's also in alignment with Head Start expectations, which is that there are 10% of kids with disabilities in their classrooms, but adds that these are children with IEPs that require more services than just speech only. And ISBE allows you to serve fewer children in a classroom if you're including children with IEPs. So you want to consider this when you're planning how many classrooms and children you can support. And so how do you assure that you're serving children with disabilities? You may already do this, and if you do, you should celebrate that. If you do not serve children with disabilities, how can you reach out? In the case of a community-based organization, do you refer children to another program now? Could you work on establishing a relationship with those who serve children with disabilities and talk about providing that support in your program? School districts or LEAs are responsible for the IEP, but the LRE may be your program where children already attend, has friends, their siblings go there, and so on. Maybe the child has even been there since they were a baby, 6 weeks old, 8 weeks old. So you really want to consider providing those services where children would be if they did not have a disability. Next slide, thank you. And are we collaborating with others to serve children with disabilities? Do we have MOUs with other agencies or LEAs to assure that we're working to refer children for evaluations as needed? Do we reach out to assure that screenings are happening for all children? And once children are identified, we make sure we're serving them in the least restrictive environment. The guidance talks about community-based programs that are working with LEAs to develop an MOU to ensure that students are being referred, evaluated, and provided services. LEAs also reach out to community programs in order to develop a relationship to ensure that their child find requirements are fulfilled. So for CBOs, community-based organizations that include children with disabilities, the LEA is responsible for funding and providing special education services. This means that IDEA is the funding source for the special education services. For a community-based organization or a non-school program, the PFA grant would need to collaborate with the LEAs in the community. The evidence that that is happening would be in the MOU that the LEA and the community-based organization have regarding supporting these students. And just another consideration is the budget. The budget impact would be that there should be time allowed for collaboration with the LEA funded staff and planning and professional development needed for staff to be able to include children. A strong agreement and connection with the LEAs in your area will be critical to implementing a high quality program. It's not the CBO's responsibility to provide special education services. Staff that provide special education and related services are the LEA responsibility through IDEA funding. Slide, please. So do we have a mission statement that reflects serving children with disabilities in inclusive settings? The guidance says that program mission statement references that all students can be included and educated in the program. Students with an IEP should be considered a PFA or a PFAE student and are active members of the classroom. So the mission and vision makes a statement that all children are included. And as a program, we individualize based off of the IEP, which means we are a part of the team writing of the IEP and have the supports and services to implement. This funding, again, comes from IDEA and from the LEA, it's not from the PFA grant. So this also goes back to the first point about serving the number of children with IEPs. If we have a vision that this is how we operate, we share that with families, then we see that they see us as an inclusive program and the best place for their child. Next slide, please. Have we planned for professional learning needs to support our teachers? Do we have collaboration time with key consultants to help us better serve all the children, especially those with disabilities? If we are a community-based organization, do we have a working relationship with the LEAs in our area to serve children with disabilities in our program? If we are an LEA, how are we assuring that we're supporting children in the PFA classroom that have IEPs? And the guidance refers programs to page 1 of this document to ensure the appropriate licensure, which we went over. Administration and staff participate in professional development training, internal and external, related to providing services to children with IEPs in the regular early childhood classroom and supporting families through the identification and evaluation process. The LEA is responsible for the funding and providing the special education services. So thinking back again to the what makes inclusion work, there's a whole component around dedicated planning time for teams. It's so important. In addition to teaming and collaboration, do all the staff, teachers, and paraprofessionals know their roles, and are they working together as an effective team? Also, professional learning is one of the key components for what makes inclusion work. So a strong agreement and connection with the LEAs in your area will be critical to implementing a high quality program. Again, considering your budget, the time to plan to meet, how you're going to include all staff in understanding this collaboration and planning. And do we have times and funds to include paraprofessionals in our professional learning also? Again, it's not the CBO's responsibility to hire special education staff. The LEA bears the responsibility for special education services. Next slide, please. So those children are fully included active members of the PFA and the PFAE classroom. Number 20 on the compliance checklist ensures that children with IEPs in the program receive support. And you can see the citation there that goes along with that. These children participate in a variety of activities with supplementary aids, services, and instructional strategies. The staff attend and participate in IEP meetings. The staff participate in professional development activities on providing services to children with IEPs in regular early childhood classrooms. And special education supports and services are provided in the PFA classroom and embedded into the activities and routines of the day. Again, the children with IEPs are not pulled out into the hallway or another room to receive their special education and related services. Next slide, please. During a monitoring visit, the teacher will be asked to describe how children with IEPs participate in a variety of activities, giving examples of supplementary aids, services, and instructional strategies, what their participation in the IEP meetings look like, and what professional development activities they may have engaged with related to providing services for children with IEPs in the regular education environment. And the last one on compliance checklist. For PFA, the compliance checklist indicator 37 gives us more information on how services to children with IEPs should look. Services to children with IEPs are coordinated with local partners and integrated across the school day. Services are coordinated with EI service providers. There's a written plan that guides coordination and collaboration activity regarding services to children with disabilities. Physical activity services take into account and accommodate children with special needs. There's a plan for coordination with providers from EI to LEAs. This might be your transition plan. There is evidence of active collaborative partnership and regular engagement with the local CFC, the Child and Family Connections Office. And there's a description of accommodations. So that takes us to the Illinois State Board of Education's inclusion brochure, just in case you weren't sure about how invested the Illinois State Board of Education is in inclusion. So this is a really great resource that you'll want to have on hand for all of your family events, your boards, your various committees that you might be on. It's available in English, Spanish, Polish, Urdu, French, and Arabic. So most of the languages are probably covered. And anything else we want to say about that?
No, I guess we have a link there and it's in the links document that you can download like a digital version of all of those. But then if you're looking for hard copies, you can contact me or our office, and we do have printed glossy copies that we send out. And we do provide these to Child Find, who does the packets for the CFCs. So when children are exiting early intervention and transitioning to early childhood, the CFCs give families a nice little folder, and this brochure is in there. And so that is another way that families have access to it. So, but you're right, we have programs that share this with every family when they're doing like their registration and kickoff events. And then it might even be on here today. We have a few programs who use this as part of their own, like to develop their own mission statement and inclusion policy. So, they just take right from these tools. That definition that we went over earlier in the day is in here too. And then the access, participation, and supports are also there. So yeah, let us know. We're happy to send them out. We haven't been on the road passing these things out for the last 2 years, so we have a lot of.
So you might need some. And I love that they're shared with families when children come out of early intervention, because, let's set the stage for these kids to be in inclusive environments and make sure that families have the information they need to really advocate for that and to know their options when they move into school district services.
Exactly. And then also in the, I don't know how I missed making a slide for this, so I'm just going to apologize, but we, in between the What Makes Inclusion Work and the models document, we put some links in there to 2 of our online modules. And so as you're listening today, and I think I even borrowed some slides from the online modules, there is an entire online module around that inclusion policy that is really, it's 3 sessions, 3 online topics that kind of walk a program through kind of what is inclusion, what might be some of the challenges that you're facing in your community or in your program, and some strategies to work through those, and some strategies to move towards implementation. So that module is kind of it's very oriented to kind of help you get going. The other one, the understanding inclusion modules, that is also, we're super proud of those topics. There's more of those. There's 6, but they're short. And those were designed really to just be very basic understanding of what is inclusion and help folks work through kind of some of the foundational information, but they are great. They're great for families. They're great for your teams. They have topic guides that go alongside of them. So they are, they're meant to be kind of standalone, but they're also great discussion kickoffs, right? You could use one for a staff meeting, watch it together, and then just work through some of the topic guide as a discussion. So those are out there and they're on demand. So all you got to do is click on them and they're there for you to use. So I'm sorry if I missed putting those in as a slide.
So many great resources.
Well, like I said, we can't. We didn't give a whole bunch of stuff. So,
This wouldn't be us.
right.
So inclusion, yay. It can happen anywhere young children are together. This is sort of our celebration slide. Think about that, and think about where the young kids in your community are. And let's think about providing services where they are, rather than making kids move around and make it, easier for the families and the kids.
Exactly. exactly. And so we have a little video here to show you, just kind of set the stage. Again, you're going to recognize a whole lot of things that hopefully you're might be happening in your program already, right? And they just kind of build that foundation for inclusion. So this is the link, and it's in your links document, but I'm going to play it here, and let's hope the whole video plays, because I don't know why it cut me short before.
Now we're going to start choice time. Farhan, hands down now.
You get the waiting list.
You could write your name on the waiting list. That's a great strategy. We are going to get started for choice time. At the beginning of choice time, the children have to choose the centers that they're going to. And in order to make the transition work, we start a routine right from the beginning of the year. Each child in the room has their own name with a piece of Velcro on the back of it. And they use those names to sign up for their centers. So we need to find out whose turn it is to call our names. And today it is going to be Carla. At the start of choice time each day, one child is the caller. And you get to sit in my chair. I will give you this, right? Big, strong voice.
Emma.
Once your name is called, you get to go get your name with your Velcro off a board and sign up for a center in the classroom. We have signs in each of our centers for choice time. And on those signs, there's a picture of the center. There's a number that says how many children can play in that center. And there's also the same number of pieces of Velcro. So if 4 children can play, there's the picture, the number 4, and 4 pieces of Velcro. 3 and 4-year-olds, they do not like to wait. It's hard for them to wait.
And me and Kennedy want to go.
Kennedy, do you want to play here as well? All right, so let's go get a timer. We have a timer. If a center is full, they might come to me and say, Mrs. Barron, can you set the timer for me? Having that visual of the red helps them see as the time gets less and less. They know they're closer to going to that center, and it helps them build that self-regulation.
It waits until it's your turn.
They're less likely to burst into tears because they know their turn is coming.
When it goes beep beep, that means that you can play it.
Another support we use, we call waiting list. I typically use waiting lists when something is new and exciting. So for instance, when our hair salon and barber shop is brand new in the dramatic play area, there's definitely going to be a wait list there. You're going to write your name there too, Parker. That sounds like a good plan. And then we'll set the timer. If they get to the center, they see all those pieces of Velcro are full, they can add their name to the wait list. Parker and Emma and Farhan, their space is here and you're next on our wait list. Come on over. And that way they know they have a turn coming. And when they know that's coming, it's easier for them to say, okay, I'll go play in another center because I know I'm going to get a turn. All right, let's find another place to play until there's a spot. By having these systems in place, it helps the children be able to wait. It's all self-regulation.
Awesome. Sorry about that. So the link, maybe one of my colleagues could put it, it is in the links document. Emily's on it. Thank you, Em. So that's an Edutopia video, but did you recognize your programs in there? Saw some things that you guys are doing, right? All building a strong foundation. A great example of that experience where I talked about earlier, of the routines within routines within routines, right? That's like the big routine of getting to your free choice time, and then all these little steps that are the kiddos get to know. And then that little guy saying, you got to wait. When the red's gone, it goes beep, beep, and then it's your turn. Perfect. So yeah, so a lot of what we already do, like I said, builds a foundation for inclusion. And I think sometimes we have some fears about how things are going to go. But what we've learned is that when we're planful and we work it through as a team together, we usually have a lot of success. So we hope that that's helpful to you. But so what does this mean for your program? We've got some like examples here to kind of talk through around inclusive practices. So, you know, as we've talked about before, all those supplemental aids and services, they can be things like, you know, just pulling in that cube chair to the dramatic play center, having those visual supports out and available for kiddos. And I'm going to go back to this picture here. Here you can see this little guy's playing and his communication sheet is there. So not only is he able to access it, but so is his friend, right? So it's not like the teacher carrying it around or the grown-up carrying it around. The children also have access, because if we use a communication device and only the grown-ups are allowed to use it with the child, or we kind of manage it, then how do they manage it with their peers? And they get enough time talking to us, right? We want them to talk to their peers. We want those connections, because we're all about that membership and belonging all the way back to the beginning of our day. So anytime we can work these things into the routine and make those connections between kiddos, that's what we're looking to do. And again, sometimes just looking for opportunities throughout the day that we can build in some of those individual supports. So here, this might be from one of your programs. I think came from somebody who's on today, right? So here is a little, this guy needs a little sensory input every now and then. So they've got this in the gross motor area, kind of set up. Anybody can use it, but it's available for this guy with an IEP to access when needed. And again, it gives some, oh, it is Kathy. She's just said it is from, it is from Lombard. Thank you for letting us use your photos. That's awesome. So here it is, just in action in Illinois, right? And I think I'm going to go to another one now from the same district. We had permission to take photos there, right? So, and they do great things. So, but making connections, and there's nothing we can do that builds those relationships and that sense of belonging other than inclusion, right? If kids aren't there, it's hard to make a connection. And so making sure that children are part of our programs all day, every day, really builds these connections. This little guy, not a visitor, right? He's part of the group. It's not like he leaves and comes back. He is, he's there all day, every day. And that's what really makes a difference for our kiddos. And we wanted to make sure that we, how we're supporting our programs is giving access and allowing for participation and supports. So I wondered if we had any specific questions. I've been kind of scrolling, looking through. There might be some deeper questions that I can't all process at once. So, but yeah, if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat about getting started, about, I think I did see one question before. Chris had asked around finding staff to use the itinerant model. And I think, again, it kind of goes to the structure of your program, because I do have many sites who use an itinerant model, and it makes sense for them. Like there's a whole more factors than, you know, because they have children in various locations, and that's the preferred method. And I think if you guys, as other sites, please weigh in on if you're finding staff. So, okay, and Kathy's reminding us, right, to lean on your specialist, your PT, OT, SLP, social workers, to help increase supports for kiddos, because they are experts at that. And we love it when we get to visit and see some of those great adaptations. So Melanie's asking about what happens when you've kind of used your guidance to fill your classroom, right? And you're at your 70-30, and then one of those kiddos gets identified, and now you've gone over, right? And we don't, ISBE does allow you to write for a variance. Did I use the right word? Is it variance?
Deviation request.
A deviation.
Okay, thank you for a deviation request, because they recognize that that's going to happen. Like it wasn't like you were purposely overloading that classroom, right? And so you can write for that. And I'm going to recommend you contact Christy Doan at ISBE for that information about how you do that. Okay, somebody's using the itinerant model in Waukegan, and they've got folks. And Jackie's looking for more guidance on the collaborative model. I think, I'm not sure. I think it's just really thinking about what those kiddos with IEPs need, and using those specialists to support that classroom teacher, and kind of doing some supportive team building and connections there. I think that would be kind of the key for that collaborative model. I don't know, Pam, do you have more to add on that?
Well, I kind of see it as sort of teaming with that gen ed teacher to make sure that the child with the IEP is getting the supports that they need, and the activities that might enable those outcomes to occur through the teaming with the teacher. So that's kind of how I see the collaborative. So again, it depends on the needs of the child. And also the needs of the teacher, I guess. So that's why it has to be a team. Christy, anything else on that?
I think you covered it.
Okay.
It's just it's dependent on the child and what that child needs to be successful in that environment.
Yeah, and then Sarah was saying that they keep their classroom at 20 because they have some children who visit at different times of the day to go up to 20. So 19, and then somebody visiting makes 20. And that's right. You don't want to go over 20. You want to keep your classroom at 20 or less. So that's right. Oh, you guys are writing long questions. Okay.
Oh,
Sorry, Anne.
That's okay. So you're looking at, oh, that's Natalie. She's asking about pushing services out to those childcare centers. And you're right, parents, that is the challenge. And we do not want families to be in that situation where they're thinking, either I go for all day care, or I figure out how to get special ed services and do a dual enrollment placement. And we don't want families to be in that situation. And we are, I mean, it is a huge challenge, and we are working to try to figure out what is the best way, especially encouraging, again, that's why you definitely hear that encouragement of pushing services out to those childcares, but it is a different way of looking at things. Yeah, and we don't want kiddos making those transitions either, right? Like here we take our kiddos who have trouble, like they're managing stuff, and then we ask them to make extra transitions. And so that is not, that's not good, right? The adults should be making the accommodations, not the kiddos, right? So yeah, looking at ways to figure that out. Oh, thanks, Emily. I'm just going to remind you about our website and those resources. Under Good to Know is where those two policy, the two online modules are, and the What Makes Inclusion Work stuff. So that's all under that Good to Know tab there. But make sure you check us out. And again, you can see if there's something specific you're looking for, we're more than happy to try to find a targeted resource for you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. And then a reminder to also check with Starnet too, because you may already have a relationship with some of their folks. And if not, you might want to start one. So.
And there's a question about what's considered a speech-only student. I was just going to hop in for that one, if you don't mind.
Please do, because I totally missed it.
So the child is considered a speech-only IEP when the main eligibility or the primary eligibility is speech language impairment, and the only services the child receives is speech. So I believe it said something about having OT services and social work services with the speech language impairment. And just remember that those are related services. So whatever those related services are should be related to what the disability is. So if the primary eligibility is speech language impairment, are those OT and social work services needed as related to that speech language impairment? And if that answer is no, then you may want to take a look at that eligibility, because they should only be on there if they're related to that primary eligibility. And you can give me a call to talk that through if you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, and I think in the guidance from the 70-30, there's a little blurb about defining that also, the speech and language only. Thanks. All right, did I miss any other questions, friends? Oh, Ruby's asking about PD opportunities around sensory profiles and awareness. I don't know if any of my Starnet friends are on to let me know, or ECPL folks, if there's anything coming up around sensory issues. But that's where I would check. If you called me, that's what I would be doing, is checking.
And I would say that Starnet, I know, because I was at one time actually in Starnet, but they should check the Starnet calendars. And now a lot of what Starnet is offering is virtual. So it's not just limited to a region. And I do know that, I know when I was in Starnet Region 2, we had Kimberly Bryce, Dr. Bryce, come in and talk about sensory issues, and she did a great job of talking about how to support children that we see might have sensory issues, whether or not they, have been diagnosed with anything or have an IEP. So I would check their calendars, and it's not just, as I said, it's not just regional in many cases now, because they're doing webinars as well. So anyone throughout the state can participate in that.
Okay, and maybe one of Emily, since you're doing such a great job with links, the ISBE calendar website that has all of Starnet early choices, we all put our stuff there. So that's kind of a one-stop spot, and you can sort by early childhood, so you could find that. And then it looks like somebody asked a question about the PFA grants and when they have to reapply. And I don't think anybody knows the answer to that question, but maybe somebody from ISBE can say if they know.
I didn't see the question, but I can jump in.
Okay.
The continuing applications are typically, so for next school year, the applications in IWAs are typically released sometime in May or June. You'll get an notification when that happens. As far as a competitive application, we are in the 4th year of the 5-year funding cycle. So barring any changes, an application would be released sometime this this time next year for funding to start in FY24. Hope that answers it.
Yeah, I think it came as a direct message to me. And I see that Shannon said, phew. So
No, you don't have to write this year.
yes, because that's,
Thanks, Jenny, because I have been getting that question a lot from my programs too.
Yeah, and I wanted to, in next month, I guess April is next month. Oh my goodness, time's flying here. Talene Tokat and I are doing a presentation with ECPL around the practices that create inclusive preschool programs. So if you're looking to, if you're thinking, oh goodness, my teaching team, my staff, I'd like to kind of think more about what happens in the classroom. We have this follow-up webinar happening in April. And so the information is on the ECPL website, and you can register off of their calendar, and it's on April 21st. So we're excited about that too, because then we can dig more into the, like today's, kind of big picture, right? And systems pieces, but we also love to talk about those practices in the classroom.
And there's a question in there about summer school. So summer school is an allowable expense provided it's within whatever grant year you're using. And it's, so if you have an extension for this year for 831, then summer school is fine. And then you can, if you don't have an 831, then summer school can start on your next year budget.
Okay. Glad you're here, Jenny. What?
I would also say just always feel free to reach out to your principal consultant, because that's what we're here for, to kind of talk through those. Is it an allowable expense, or would this work within my budget? Things like that. So reach out to your principal consultant in early childhood.
Yeah. And here's our emails again, if you've got anything for us. It looks like we're gonna kind of wrap up a little early, but we wanted to leave you with a quote. Inclusion is not about bringing people into what already exists. It's about making a new space, a better space for everyone. So as you're planning ahead, remember to think about it that way, that we're not just bringing in some new kids and making it, we're really creating an inclusive program all at once. So we'll stay on if folks have more questions. We're happy to chat, but we also know you guys are busy, so we're only about 15 minutes early. So.
And Susie has some announcements, I believe, right,
Oh,
Susie?
okay.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, if you could stop sharing your screen, and
Oh, I can do that. Thanks, Susie. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay. I just. Okay. A couple of things. We just wanted to remind everybody that we do have another administrators forum coming up. The date is April 13th. It will also be from 1 to 2:30. It is entitled Successful Early Childhood Education and Care to Kindergarten Transitions. And our presenters will be Dr. Michelle Sands and Dr. Antoinette Taylor. So registration for that particular session will be open next week. We don't have it launched quite yet, but it will be up next week, probably Monday afternoon, I would estimate. And you are welcome to register at that time. We would love to see you there. And then also we will be sending a follow-up email to everybody for today's session to create the evaluation. Please watch for it. It'll be within the next couple of days. We don't always get it out right away. We like to reconcile and make sure that we have everybody registered or checked in that had registered. So within a couple of days, if you don't see anything by Monday, feel free to reach out to us and we will be sure to get you that evaluation so that you can also get an evidence of completion if those of you are looking for that. Also want to mention that if you wanted to save the chat from this particular session, you are able to do so yourself within the chat, just the three little dots above it to the right. You could just hit that and save chat and you can save that yourself. And then if anybody has any other questions, feel free to type them in at this time. Also want to let you know, please be sure to watch our website. It is eclearningil.org. And that is through the Early Childhood Professional Learning website. And we have several professional development opportunities still remaining within this year, not only through us, but with some of our partnering agencies. So that is all I have to share. If anybody has anything else, please feel free. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for spending your Wednesday afternoon with us. And we hope to hear from you. So thank you. Yeah, thanks. And all your
Thanks, everybody.
friends.
Good to see you.